Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Power Vacuum. I'm your host, Belmont. And it's been a while since I've even heard the name We Happy Few. Well, we have this article from PC Games In. We Happy Few was an early access flop, but it's finally brilliant. Before South of Midnight, We Happy Few sent Compulsion's reputation into a tailspin with the strangest fumble in early access history. He didn't know it had done a tailspin. I know it wasn't well received, mostly because it's kind of a boring game. I don't think they advertised it well enough of what you would be doing in the game or how the mechanics or what. So it's kind of like three games in one. There's the overlying main game and the world they built of like basically people being drugged out of their minds in order to be happy. But then you have 3 different characters you went through, and each character had a different play style and different, uh, basically way they interacted with the world, and halfway through the 2nd character, I got kinda bored, and then I got to the 3rd character and just didn't have the desire to play anymore. It was maybe I should revisit it considering I still have it. And it's my game. I might as well try and beat it. But it just seemed very lackluster and very unpolished. And then the mechanics, mostly for the second character, um, there's like a feeding mechanic. For those of you that have played it, you know what I'm talking about. But I hate when games have like artificial difficulty through what are essentially survival mechanics. And it wasn't touted as a you would have to do these kind of survival task game. So when they were introduced, I just wasn't having it. And it kind of soured my taste in the game. If anything, they should have made that character the end of the game, especially with how her story played out. But that's my opinion. I didn't write the game. But let's see what this article has to say. Does it sounds like they're suggesting that it had one of the you know, amazing turnarounds that either, Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky have both had because sometimes games come out and they're not good, but the company redeems themselves down the road. Wait, it's a survival game? Okay. Yes. Thank you. The first line of this paragraph in this article. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt when you get to the second character. You're like, oh, survival mechanics. Damn it. I thought it was gonna be like a sneaky game, which the main character well, not even the main character, the first character you play, it is. It's like a stealth game. But yeah, here we go. Wait, it's a survival game? That was the prevailing question surrounding We Happy Few when it launched in early access in 2016. Having lowered jaws industry wide with rich world and narrative clout it demonstrated in previews beforehand, it felt almost like a bait and switch that Compulsion's hype magnet was not. In fact, from the Bioshock mold, but more of a Daisy alike in Andrew Ryan's clothing. That is a weird ass sentence, and I do not like the wording of it. Uh, Here was a game pulled straight from the sort of books you'd expect to find in Ken Levine's bedside table. Huxley's Brave New World and Orwell's 1984, novels rich in social allegory and poetic resonance. Distinct from the pulp of Tom Clancy or Warhammer that other games unduly lean upon. It had found a genuinely fresh setting in an alt history, 1960s Britain, where everyone takes psychoactive drugs to suppress the terrible reality that would otherwise confront and consume them. We Happy Few's literary clout and mid-century aesthetic. Do you mean aesthetic? Did you is aestheta a proper term to use in this case? Okay, whatever. Moving on. Crafted by a studio founded by Arcane alumni with formidable immersive sim chops, was as close a throwback to BioShock as we'd ever seen before, except, oh, it's a survival game. That's disheartening, I said in 2016, having tried a largely failed to hurdle the hunger and thirst meter with some enthusiasm intact for the fantastic premise. It isn't that survival games are bad or that they don't deserve a nice things like a story. It was that We Happy Few's best qualities just weren't suited to the survival genre. The story as a survival game is in a survival game is If You'll Stifle a Yawn, written by you as the player. It's a tale about how you built a luxurious dwelling out of worthless scrap and tamed the local wildlife to your needs. I'm going to stop right there. I disagree with that. There are survival games that have rich narratives that the survival aspect is just how you get from point A to point B of the story. There are plenty of those that exist. This person seems to be referencing specifically games that were multiplayer survival, like Rust or Ark, that relied on world building by the players, not by the development team. When you play something like Windbound or Green Hell, those are survival games that have actual narrative stories built into them that you go from point A to point B, and in that interim, you have to survive getting to those points. Uh, but yeah, that's this statement applies to 25% of survival games. There's a whole other 75% of survival games out there that don't fit into this mold. They just, are similarly shaped, but not exact. As such, the best survival games need a premise. What is this world I'm in? What are these forces working against me? What does it mean to stay alive? The plot is provided by the player's continued interaction with the game world. We Happy Few is and always was a game with both premise and plot. The premise is fantastic alone, but it's also full of character development. It plays out from the perspective of multiple protagonists and contains numerous juicy NPC plot arcs. At its heart, it's slowly unfurling mystery about the true nature of the world and the grim reality everyone's hiding from. Marrying all of that to the survival game that presented itself to us for We Happy Few's initial early access release felt like overkill. It was like hearing that Hideo Kojima and Warren Spector have teamed up to form a new studio working on Fortnite Battle Pass cosmetics. Ironically, the reason Compulsion released an early access build in the first place was to avoid any confusion about what its game was and was not, having seen this mess that No Man's Sky had gotten itself into recently beforehand. So the issue with that though is there's a lot of people like me who avoid early access and avoid as much information or spoilers as possible so we can jump into a game fresh when it has a release date. I try to consume minimal amount of information about any game I plan on playing because I want it to all be like new and unique. I want the experience to be genuine, which sometimes, you get a rotten egg. Sometimes you get fucking Bioshock Infinite. So it's, hit or miss. This was definitely a miss because I didn't know that it was going to be a survival game. Even after the early access, I avoided the information because I wanted to enjoy the game on my first go round. In reality, it only compounded the confusion. Players were presented with a tightly scripted intro to a game that appeared to be a first person story game with AAA production values, and then minutes later found themselves scavenging bobby pins out of old lockers and wondering where that game had disappeared to. See, that it didn't become a problem till the feeding meter and the drink meter and whatnot, which are very minimal for the first character and very prevalent in the second character. And I'm not sure with the third character because they got so disheartened and disenfranchised that I didn't go through with that character's story. Now, the truth of the matter is that Compulsion had developed not just one, but two concepts for a game. One about a world where everyone was high on drugs and in denial about the brutal reality around them, and another about a procedurally generated roguelike that came about during contrast development. It wasn't clear that these were two separate entities until the early access build went live. The rest is history. We Happy Few never really capitalized on that early hype because its earliest playable forms were so different from the game that people expected. Crucially, it didn't let its finer qualities shine. Like No Man's Sky, it's also undergone a quiet and well judged metamorphosis. Very, very quiet because I haven't heard anything about this game since it came out years ago. If you haven't played We Happy Few since 2018, I've got some news. It's bloody brilliant now. Not as a Bioshock beater or an immersive sim, you understand. It's still not those things, but neither is it punishing Daisy style meter filling snooze fest. Instead, Compulsion minimized the more laborious aspects of survival like hunger and thirst, creating less friction between the player and the game world. And honestly, what a world. It all If all the failures in 2025 were this good, we'd have an embarrassment of riches in PC gaming. You wonder its bucolic ideals, unsure whether to feel relaxed or horrified, confronted one minute by a gorgeous meadow and the next by a young couple who've hanged themselves in the attic of their cottage after killing their own children. There's still a lot of searching around for bobby pins, bottle caps, and other deeply unglamorous inventory slop that you can turn into useful items. The combat and stealth system still feel clumsy and boil down to using X-ray stealth vision to move past guards undetected. When it all kicks off, you swing some DIY melee creation at the enemy until they go down. Adam Jensen, Arthur is not. However, like his fellow protagonist, Arthur's strikingly human character. His under the breath mumblings convey real pathos, and voice actor Alex Wyndham delivers them with such a winning mix of guilt, humor, and optimism. The overall experience might not be polished to a AAA sheen, but very few games turn out with central performance this good. In the end, We Happy Few's best assets is its setting. In its more or less final form in 2025, it's allowed to shine. The dystopian island of Wellington Wells evokes Aldous Huxley and Doctor Who, 1984 and 1945, all in the space of one walk from a downer's shack to a picture perfect village full of joy addicts. Compulsion Games chose widely between the two opposing game concepts it had at once in We Happy Few's earliest form. It's a shame that greater numbers of players haven't noticed and that it now serves as cautionary tale about the dangers of early access. By all means, use it to develop collaboratively with your community, but don't use it to refine fundamental concept, or the players who sample its roughest sketches might never come back. Yep. I didn't play the early release or early access, but I played it on release, and yeah, I was disenfranchised, as I said earlier, and it just I have no feeling about going back. Maybe I'll check it out sometime in the not too distant future, but no, I don't know. I got to be in the mood for that kind of thing. And even if it's like toned down, still a toned down Subnautica was still Subnautica. Toned down survival is still survival. And especially when you were like, oh, this is going to be a dystopian um like stealth explorative game, and they go, no, it's a dystopian survival game with some stealth explorative aspects. It just, turns you away from the game. When anything isn't what you expected it to be, it's hard to go back to it, even when it's changed. It took me I never played No Man's Sky on release, and I know no now that they've completely redeemed themselves in many people's eyes, there's still a large group of people that refuse to go back to the game because of how disappointing it was on release. So maybe I'll check this out. Maybe I won't. Huge surprise though, because I didn't think they were doing anything with this. I had no idea they had updated. I had no idea they made these changes, and I don't think anybody else really did because they did it under the radar. And, when you make changes to a game that wasn't received well, you should blast it from every rooftop. You shouldn't do it in secrecy behind closed doors. And it seems maybe they've failed to learn two lessons. I don't know. But that's all I have for this article. This is your host, Belmont, signing out.